I'm all right. How are y'all?
Doing well.
It's been a day.
Started doing shots, so it's a good way
Doing
to start a
shots.
podcast, yeah.
Shots.
What are you? What shots are you doing?
I'm doing Tuaca, which is a brandy.
Yeah. I think you talked about that on the drinking Zoom that time.
Yeah, it's become my favorite shot type of drink because it goes down so smooth.
Every time you say Tawaka, I think of
Chewbacca.
Well, no, I think of fried green tomatoes when they say Tawanda.
Oh,
That's what I don't know why my brain goes there because I've only seen fried green tomatoes like a handful of times. It's not like something I think about. It's not a movie I think about often, but
Matt,
for some
how many
reason,
times have you seen it?
I like how he said, I've only seen fried green tomatoes a handful of times.
As have I. I've probably seen it as many times as Caleb, but I'm betting Matt's never seen it.
I don't think I've seen fried green tomatoes.
Dude, they cook a dude and serve him to their friends.
it's pretty metal and lesbianic at times.
I thought that was a movie all about like women's liberation.
It is.
I mean,
they cook her husband that's been beating on her.
Wow.
Cut him up and cook him and serve him as barbecue to the town.
Oh yeah, it gets dark. It gets dark.
Wow.
Yeah, the
I bet you didn't see that happening in that movie, did you?
Certainly did not. Did M. Night Shyamalan do this movie?
No. It's
low. A lot of twist.
It's low-key hilarious though. Like it really is. So I have this weird connection to that movie though, because when I lived in Georgia, the town that we were the little small town that we were in, building this giant power plant just outside of Macon is called Juliet. Well, if you don't know, Juliet is actually the town that they filmed Fried Green Tomatoes in.
Oh, nice.
And they have turned the entire set into a living, breathing, functional part of the town. So you can go and you can eat fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be eating anything from the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Oh, dude, let
alone their barbecue.
But you can go, you can see Iggy, I think it's Iggy's. Like they have the little apothecary that they had opened up. There's like you know it's a tourist attraction, but in the middle of nowhere, and they don't advertise like super big, but just kind of rolled up there and it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. And they still have like parts of the set built that you can go tour and check it out. It's fun.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got to this place, but here we are. I also don't know how we made it to episode 190 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. Per usual,
lots of patience. That's how we did that.
Deep breaths, of an inability to know when we're done, that kind of thing. I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie, as usual.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And it is good to hear your voices. So a little inside baseball. We're actually recording this on Friday night. We normally record on Sunday mornings, but life has a weird way of just throwing you curveballs, and you got to adapt sometimes. So that's what we're doing here. But you're not hearing this until after Sunday because I'm going to be particularly lazy and edit this on Saturday morning and schedule it for Sunday.
Well, there you go.
That's how that's.
So all those details are for naught.
Yeah, that's just a little inside baseball. Folks letting know how the sausage is made. But I've had a hell of a day and had a hell of a week. I'm exhausted and tired, and that's about all I got. How are you guys?
Very much the same. Hell of a day, exhausted and tired. But I did get to see my grandbaby today, so that was nice.
Nice. Didn't just get to see her, you got to hold her a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen her or held her, but it was still very a good moment, I guess would be the way to put it.
Now, are you going to be a pawpaw, a pop?
Pop-pops, yep.
Pop-pops. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Doesn't she get to decide that once she gets to that age?
I don't know. I was told that that's what my name is.
I'm holding hope out for Peepaw.
Peepaw?
Yeah.
You know.
I was thinking the other day, it's like, how do I tell people how old I am? I am my bestie has grandchildren years old. That's how old I am.
I will be getting a what do you call it? An AARP card in the mail this year on my birthday.
Nice.
And that's some sweet action.
Get the discounts.
Get some discounts all over town.
Does Libsyn have a AARP discount? Can we get
right?
Can we get some cushion on the podcast? Fun stuff. Well, I'm glad to be with you guys tonight. Normally this is when I'd be doing a bunch of reading, but we had to fit in a bunch of reading earlier than we normally do. And so for folks, if you're new to the show, hopefully we're getting some new listeners. We welcome you. We're glad you found our little humble podcast. What we like to do at the beginning of most of our shows is we do what we call a short stack. And that is where we talk about 3 little books that we've read through the week. We're not going to go really deep on them, but it just kind of lets each of us, as people, as friends and people who have a little podcast, know what the other folks are reading. These are things that didn't make it to like our, oh my God, I got to talk about this book in depth on the show, but it's just, like, hey, this is a nod to what I'm grabbing each week and you should check it out. So I'm curious about my brethren over here across the airwaves. What have y'all read this week?
Yeah, I read Sweet Paprika #1 from Image Comics,
Nice.
Mirka and Dolfo. This is the story of a successful businesswoman who is sexually repressed. Oh, and she also happens to be a demon. So there's that. Then I read Star Wars High Republic, The Monster of Temple Peak #1, IDW. This is Kevin Scott and Rachel Stott on this. This is the story, as all of these High Republic books do, they take place long before anything you've seen in the movies. This is the story of a monster hunter that was actually a Jedi Padawan that left the order and is now hunting monsters. Actually a really, really good book, lots of fun. And then the last book on my list is one I've talked about for the first 2 issues, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it again. But that's Bunny Mask #3 from Aftershock, Paul Tobin, Andre Muti, and Taylor Esposito. This book just continues to be one of my favorite new, I don't even know if it's really horror anymore, if it's more of a supernatural type book with some horror elements in it, but really, really good. Really compelling story, and the art's just beautiful, as you come to expect from Muti.
Nice. Well, even though the homeboy didn't finish the Jedi Academy back there, I imagine that's you still got to learn a good skill set that plays well into monster hunting.
Yeah, it's actually a female, but she's doing she's kind of hiding from the Jedi as well. So there's kind of a double-edged thing going on, but we don't know her full story yet. We're just getting it in kind of flashbacks and things of that nature. So really, really good story up to this point. So
maybe she'll punch a crate dragon.
She might. She cut the head off of a Gundark in the first one. So
I mean, I feel bad for the Gundark. It's not what he was looking for, but
well, he was killing people and stuff.
So. and stuff.
Yeah, things that Gundarks do.
Well, what about you, Matt? Did you get anything read this week, brother?
I did. So my short stack, starting with Image Comics, I read issue #3 of the 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton by Kyle Starks and Chris Schweizer. This continues to be a great series. It's a real fun action mystery crime book is how I would describe it. So yeah, if anybody hasn't picked this up yet, I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Like everything I've read by Kyle Starks so far, a lot of humor and just great characters. He's great at inventing characters and the interactions between all the different personality types that he puts in his books. He seems to really enjoy coming up with drastically different characters that are forced together to achieve a goal.
This one, I think we did the first one as our roundtable book, and it was really a great book. And somehow the local comic book store didn't have me on it. I don't know if I didn't sign up or whatever, but which seems to be the case a lot of times when I think I'm signed up for something. But I will be getting this in collected edition.
Yeah, check it out. Definitely.
It's
the second thing on my short stack is from Dynamite, Red Sonja, Black, White, and Red #2. The issue that I have, it's got a cover by Lucio Carrillo, and it's a great freaking cover. I mean, it looks really good. 3 different stories in this one, all different creative teams, great artwork, short stories. These were really strong. What I wanted to point out in this comic, unrelated to the stories itself, I was surprised to learn that the next Red Sonja series is going to be written, and the art is also going to be done by Mirka Andolfo.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
How about that action?
Yeah.
That will be absolutely beautiful.
So that I looked at that and I looked at it and I was like, am I reading this right? So yeah, I thought even you guys would be on for that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will definitely be on for it.
And then number 3 on my short stack, most importantly of all, from 1992. That's right, the early 90s, glorious time. From Marvel UK Comics, Warheads #1. Found this little baby in the wild. First issue of Warheads. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Warheads from Marvel UK.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The subtitled "Big Guns and High Tech Mysticism!" exclamation point. Guest starring Wolverine, and he's not happy about it! Exclamation point. This creative team on this one. Story is by one Nick Vince, and the art is by Gary Erskine and John Beeston.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story of some time traveling cybernetic mercenary criminals, and they go back to this story as they happen to go back to Australia in the late 80s, where one Wolverine is stationed, as he was in that X-Men storyline. Runs afoul of them. Things don't turn out so well for them. The artwork on this is really, really good, very detail oriented. In one panel, dude takes the time to, there's one of these mercenaries is a woman in her underwear, from the, her bottoms are just her underwear.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes the time to draw, I guess, what the kids would call a camel toe.
What the kids would call, huh?
Interesting choice, I thought. So yeah, I'm sure most of you have already read this one and remember it fondly, but just in case you haven't, run out and pick up Warheads #1 from Marvel UK.
So yeah, the funny thing is those of you that don't know Matt on a personal level, and you see him at the comic book store, he is like a kid in a candy store when he finds these boxes of 90s comics.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he can spot them from like a mile away, and he will deep dive into them for hours.
Because they're gold.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, did you say that Gary Erskine did he do the lines on that, or did you say he did the colors or ink?
Well, it just says he and John Beeston are the art, so I'm assuming he did the pen and ink, and I guess John Beeston did the colors. It doesn't differentiate which is which.
Okay, so the thing I knew that name sounded familiar. The thing I know him from, he did the inks on the Thunderbolts reassembled. Way back in the day when it was Fabian Nicieza and Tom Grummett were on that series. And so it's interesting. And I know he's done some, I think he did some of the inks on one of the Cross books as well. And I want to say that he's got some 2000 AD stuff in his back catalog, but I haven't seen anything out of Gary Erskine in a long, which I know you're talking about a 90s book, but I wonder where that dude went.
Yeah.
He's been sent off to the pasture, as a lot of these guys have been.
I'm assuming he's living high on the hog on this Warheads #1 money.
He's got Warheads IP money.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
No, I had to look up the cover just to see what it looked like. And is it kind of redundant to say that Wolverine's not happy about what he's doing?
Yeah, I know. I thought it was interesting. They made a point to say that. Like, okay, Wolverine's in this story, but he doesn't like it. It's like,
yeah.
huh, okay.
This is not surprising on a high level.
Yeah.
So I read some cool books this week for my short stack, and I want to start off with one It's not necessarily a comic per se, but it's a picture book, if that makes sense. It's you guys know I'm a huge fan of Tom of Finland, right? Like I've spoke about him several times. Very influential homoeroticism. You know, blurring line. A lot of it's just pornography, but it's still political in nature as far as just being kind of punk rock and showing a more masculine side of gay men. Well, I'm also a big fan of this Japanese artist named Gengora Tagame, and I've spoken about one of his books before. It's called My Brother's Husband, and that's more of a very nuanced, feel good story, feel bad story. But he also Gengora Tagame is also really well known for doing very homoerotic pinup style art and homoerotic books, which feature Asian men, which is not something you see a lot here in the States as far as artistic homoeroticism, whatever you want to call it, that looks like. So he's kind of well known for that. Well, he and some of his buddies, specifically Go Mishima and an artist named Jiraiya, they put together a book called An Ode to Tom, Homoerotic Art from Japan. I found this online, and it's really good. Like I said, it's not a comic, it's not stories, but it's different depictions of very very masculine Asian men in various poses. It's really cool. Like I said, it's very cheesecakey at certain points, but you can see the different styles. They range from being something that is hyper rendered, hyper detailed to very cartoonish. People, some of it is hypersexual, some of it's just big beefy muscular dudes like playing with a puppy. So you get this kind of broad swath of just gay men, like larger gay men, bears, if you will, being bears in different outfits, different looks, comfortable. Some of it's meant to invoke sensuality, some of it's just pure sexuality, some of it's torture porn. But it was really interesting to flip through and see some of this work by some of these artists. And like I said, I've been a fan of Gengora Tagame's for a long time, but I've never seen this artist Jiraiya, or I think is how you pronounce the name. But they're definitely on my radar as far as looking out for some of the art and the pinups and some of their sequential work. It's very, I mean, I enjoy looking at it for a multitude of reasons, but at the end of the day, it's like the gay version of Betty Page type stuff. Like it's fun to look at, but it also says something, and it's stirring. In the middle of my little short stack, I have a book that I hope one of you guys pick this up. It's by Scotty Young and Jorge Corona, which the creative team on Middle West. John Francis Bellew, who is Scotty Young's colorist forever and most of his projects, and Nate Picos on the letters. Again, loved Middle West. I think that was a fantastic series. They just came out with the Middle West Omnibus. If you haven't read it, I would encourage anybody and everybody go pick that up, because it's the shit. Like that book it'll treat you so many ways you're bound to like one of them. So it's cool to see these folks come back and do another story together. And this book is called The Me You Love in the Dark. It's about a young artist who went from being the starving artist to being the hot shit all of a sudden, and is uninspired and rents a haunted house to hopefully catch some inspiration. Gorgeous art, exactly what you would expect to see from Jorge Corona. Finds a way to make really, really dark and broody, gloomy colors mix in with some almost neon aspects of the color spectrum and just pop off the page. It's incredible. And then last but not least in my little artistic feast is a new story. Comes from a publisher that we all know and love called Ablaze. But it is not, as you might expect, a Conan story, which is what we usually read from Ablaze. This is Maria Lovett's Porcelain. And I am all in on this story. This is Porcelain #1. Just the 30,000 foot view of it. Young girl lives in a wasteland world, gets sent to town by her aunt who she lives with to collect stuff, and walks off the beaten path, and all kinds of Maria Lovett psychedelic horror madness ensues as she is sucked into something called the dollhouse. And this is a little bit of a different Maria Lovett than I think we've seen before. This is almost like almost like Maria Lovett went and read some stuff by Mobius and then came back and said, I want to do the Maria Lovett spin on Mobius. So I am constantly astounded by Lovett's work. And so if you haven't seen this, if you haven't put your eyeballs on it, you needs to get it. You needs to. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's the second time you've heard us talk about it on this show. So obviously it's time to go get it.
Yep. Now, did you do it as a short stack or your book of the week last week?
I did it as my short stack.
That's what I was going to say. I couldn't remember you. I didn't remember you going in depth on it, but
yeah, I did not. It's a great book though.
Yes, dude, that just the little lines and the little details she puts, just even in like flowers and stuff. It's outstanding.
Yeah, she's just a fantastic artist. She's one of this new group. Her, Peach, and Mirka Andolfo are just three of my favorite new artists. So
you know what? I was kind of impressed by this one though. If you read some of her past works, one of our criticisms of her past work is like all the female characters, like it's almost like she's drawing the same character in different books.
Right.
That wasn't the case in this book.
It was not. No.
Yeah, completely looking at a different like facial profile. So that was the hotness. So yeah. If you want to tell us what you're reading, maybe you've got a short stack, maybe you read 3 books that you need to get something off your chest, you need to let us know about it. You can do that. You can tell us all about it if you come to our Facebook page. All you got to do is type in the search bar, look up Southern Fried Geekery on the Facebooks. We're right there. You answer a few little questions to let us know you're not, some weird Russian bot that wants to hire us to smuggle in money to the Trump organization or whatever. As long as you answer those questions, we'll let you in, and then you can converse with lots of other people who are a member of our little community. Talk about the TV shows and the comics and the this and the that you enjoy. And if you're a creator that does your own thing, maybe you want to talk about it, you can do that there too, as long as you are participating at large in the group. Now, don't be that guy that joins the group, pitches your Kickstarter, and then goes away at the end.
Right.
Yeah, don't be that guy. But it's a great community, and we support all kinds of people who do Kickstarters. We have them on our show. We talk to them, so we like to do that. But we also like the conversation.
Absolutely.
So get on that. You can also check out images, panels, and stuff of what we're reading and what we're doing. If you follow us on both the Instagram and the Twitters, we're at SFG Podcast on both of those. If you want to shoot us an email, you can fire off one at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. We live in the digital age. We're very, very easy to connect to. Well, Matt's not. Matt hides behind a wall.
Matt hates digital worlds.
Yeah.
He's scared that he's going to get sucked into Jessica Rabbit or something.
Matt's not even sure that he wants to connect with us most of the time. Just like, no, you're not
Roger Rabbit universe or something. Yeah,
not connecting with me, no sir.
That's right.
But speaking of making connections, I connected with a book this week based off of Craig's almost demand that we read it as our roundtable. If you're listening to the show, you're a longtime fan, you know that we all try to read the same book every week. That way we can give our takes on it, back and forth, talk about things we liked and didn't like. And sometimes we're all on the same page. Sometimes it's 2 out of 3, 1 out of 3. On one side, it's fun though. We each get to give our thoughts on the book. And this week, Craig piped up and said, "Hey, we should read Campisi the Dragon Incident, this new joint from Aftershock." Because let me tell you, I don't know very many people who just go to the mat for Aftershock more than Craig does. This is one of your favorite publishers. You just love them. In a lot of the ways, it's kind of like me with Vault.
I do, but this was actually Matt that suggested this. I just put it in the text message, but yeah, Matt was the one that was my book of the week, like my on the menu book,
right?
But yeah, Matt, we were at the comic book store and he decided this, but yeah, absolutely a good choice in my opinion.
Nice. Well, to speak on that. So 30,000 foot view, you liked it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I'll get it on a weekly basis or buy it collected. It's or on a monthly basis rather, or buy it collected. But I really enjoyed this first issue. It was fun. There was a lot of interesting dialogue. I love the kind of the Sopranos meet the I don't know, Game of Thrones type feel of it. So yeah.
Nice. Well, what about you, Matt? How'd it treat you?
Yeah, I thought it was well done. I have, and I've said this more than once, but I just have a hang up about the intersecting of the quote real world and fantasy genre. Right. That's a hang up of mine I have. So it's hard for me to get on board with that just because of that personal obstacle that I have. But I mean, it was definitely well done. No doubt about it.
The dialogue was what got me. The writing in it was
yeah, absolutely.
It cracked me up. And
yeah,
it's interesting. I'm like, and we've talked about this. I'm going through and watching The Sopranos right now, and it's one of those weird things where things are timed just right by the universe, because there are some words in here and some phrases that I wouldn't have no idea what they actually meant. Some vernacular if I wasn't watching The Sopranos and didn't get some of the mafiosa talk. So I'm really glad I've got that under my belt.
You guys browbeat me into that as well, and I absolutely agree. It really gave that vibe. It was like, wow, I'm glad I'm watching The Sopranos while I'm reading.
It's just fun. Yeah. I thought it was great. So what is this book that we all thought was great? Well, the book is called Campisi, and it's actually called Campisi, the Dragon Incident. It's written by James Patrick, with art by Marco Licati and Rachel Deering on the colors. And then also, actually Rachel Deering was the letterer. Marco Licati did the art and the colors on it. So the best way to describe this book and describe the tone of what it is and how it will make you feel is really just to read the first sentence. Once upon a fucking time, like way back before Netflix and shit, there were dragons. And so it really just dips you into the world right off the bat and gives you some history of this legend where the dragons were tricked and pushed back and by humans, double crossed a number of things. I think there's a little bit of an analog to maybe some, almost like the dragons were meant to be an analog for like Native Americans. They constantly moved west. They were promised land, and then those treaties were broken by the king, by the expansion, the American expansion west. But that you can just read that into it. I like to read into things, but at the bare minimum of the story, it's just dragons. But they were kind of driven into a point of extinction, except for this one little camp on the West Coast. And that's kind of the only place they exist. Well, years and years and years go by. And in the middle of this, of this kind of unnamed city, but this neighborhood called Green Village, probably a nod or homage to the Greenwich Village of New York. But there's this guy who is, he's really protective of his neighborhood, his town. He's the kind of guy that he's kind of unassuming. He doesn't have a day job per se, but he just takes care of business. Like, when he sees a couple of dudes who might be up to no good or, looking to sling some illicit substances in his neighborhood, he takes care of business. He likes to say, I take care of issues before they become problems, because the family that I work for, the organization, they've got other people who take problems and deal with them before they get out of hand, and you don't want them to get called in. So actually, he's kind of the guy you would rather see. And his name is Sonny, and he's the kind of dude that everybody in the neighborhood knows him, and he's nice with the kids. The old ladies wave at him. It's people who know what's up. They know the game. And he makes sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. But he also is a gangster. He also goes in and makes sure that people who, are supposed to be paying for protection are paying their money, or the racket is on board. And so when he's doing this, he's taking care of his daily business and, making sure that the youngsters in neighborhoods they know what's up. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this giant dragon flies overhead, and none of these folks have ever seen one this far east before. Like I said, the dragons set up camp out west, and they're just dwindling. But this dragon is, huge. He's like the size of a football field and all kinds of green color, and he just kind of flies across the neighborhood. Doesn't really cause any physical trouble when he flies over. It's just kind of scoping things out, but he definitely gets everybody's attention. I mean, how could he not? But the dragon lands in this old abandoned construction site. Like he crawls inside it and just kind of nests there. He chills, doesn't really do anything. And, you know, the townspeople are like, okay, that's probably not a good thing, but it's not bothering anything right now. Like, let's just handle our business and see what happens. But the dragon waits and the dragon watches, and you know, he looks around and he sees all kinds of things, good things, people taking care of each other, bad things, people being abused, and he just kind of sits there and lurks. Meanwhile, all this happens. Our boy Sonny goes back to you know, local business that serves as a headquarters, and you know, meets with his boss, with his Don, and you know, Don drops some news on him like, hey, you know, somebody from the neighborhood hasn't paid their bills. That's strike 3 and they're out. But don't worry, we're sending this to somebody else. You know, what do you want to talk to us about? And he's like, there's a dragon. And he's like, yeah, we heard about it, but you know, what are we supposed to do? We're just a bunch of dudes. And it's not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna go fight a dragon. What are you gonna do, a dragon? And he's, you know, he's like, oh, I mean, okay, sure. All right. But maybe have some second thoughts about going and whacking this poor guy who owns a restaurant and just was trying to make ends do. But the Don's not having. He's like, dude, there's a cycle. We got to let folks know the score. And he sends out these two these two wise guys that are going to go handle that, you know, not so great business. And this is kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. The dragon sees this hit take place, and it just reminds him of all the stories, how the old king double crossed him, all the, you know, these old lore about how mistreated the dragons were. And he just proceeds to throw a bitch fit all over town in the most dragoniest of ways. And it's pure carnage that's going to rain down. And like that, you know, our boy Sonny realizes that he's going to have to take care of the dragon and save the neighborhood. That kind of brought about its own demise a little bit by just being what it is. And so that's where the issue ends. On the next issue, we're going to see, you know, how our boy Sonny and how the mob is going to try to slay a dragon. I'm on board with this. The writing was great. The you know, like I said, they threw in a lot of mafioso talk, you know, a lot of this Italian, you know, I was, you know, looking for somebody to have a Gumar at one point, you know, smoke a cigar, but it's just fun. I'm not gonna, you know, the art is not gonna win, like, you know, it's not gonna be my favorite artist of the year, but it was cool. The colors are beautiful. There's this, they're very bright. It's digital coloring, it looks like. Some of the panels were a little stiff, but I think they were meant to be, especially because they only felt stiff when they were talking about the you know, the lore, when they were going through the flashback, and some of the knights were very, you know, they looked like a little marionette-ish in the way that they were depicted, but I think that was done purposefully. And it added a little something to the texture of the story, for me at least. But
yeah, I thought the dragon was drawn really, really well.
Yeah.
In the scenes with the dragon specifically. You don't pronounce the W in Greenwich, it's Greenwich.
Greenwich, okay. Look, I was born in a rice field.
For you people, yeah, for you people from Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, the art was fine. It's fine. It's, you know, the stuff with the dragon, the colors, like you said, were absolutely great in the book. To me, what shined in this book was the writing, though.
Mm-hmm.
And how they just all assume that, you know, it's just no big deal. It's just remember the dragon that landed over in Jersey, and the dragon that was, you know, oh no, that was a kraken. You know, it was.
Yeah.
You know, these supernatural elements are just part of their world, and you know, the mafia's got no time for this crap.
The art is it. I mean, it fits in great with Aftershock. Like, if you've seen Aftershock's catalog, the art is kind of, it's right in that strike zone that I think Aftershock looks for. The things that I love were just the really down to earth street level things that, like you said, yeah, this is a world where dragons are they're not common, but they're known, but it's just something they hear about, you deal with.
Yeah, it's
but,
probably just going to take a shit in somebody's pool and fly away.
right. Yeah. I mean, but you know,
As
but
dragons do.
it's that the you know, this guy, Sonny, you know, he knows the neighborhood people's names. He, you know, the dialogue about when he's talking to the drug dealers at the very beginning, when they're like, well, you know, what are you doing here? And they're trying to get smart with him. And, you know, oh, we're just looking for a place to open up a hot dog stand. And he just lays out this whole narrative about, oh, well, turns out I'm the hot dog stand inspector, motherfuckers. like just
you can't put it here because the kids need vegetables. They don't need hot dogs. And Mrs. Whoever is allergic to mustard. So, you know, you can't have a dog stand here. So.
Yeah, and just proceeds to just break them down. That was fun. Now, did you guys read the back matter?
Yeah,
into this?
I did not because I read it digitally. To be honest, it was in my box, but for some reason didn't make it home with me, so I had to read it digitally.
Okay, Matt, why don't you tell the kids at home about the back matter?
Back is a kid's. It's a kid's report on the history. It's a fourth grade history report on dragons by one Bobby Bazula.
I wish I had read it.
It's hilarious. He, you know, supposed to be doing this, you know, essentially book report on dragons, and spends more than half of his report talking about videos he watched on YouTube. So, you know, it's like it felt very, very fourth grade. It's really funny.
He was letting the teacher know. He's like, hey, you forgot to teach us this. So hopefully now that I've told you about it, now I know you'll teach other people about it.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit timely, right? Like, because we're having this kind of national conversation about what is part of our education. You know, you think about things like the 1619 project and things that aren't in our history books, and there are some supplemental stuff. You know, there's people who are going out and making, you know, like legitimate academic folks who have YouTube channels. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit on YouTube too, don't get me wrong, but you have folks who are doctorate in like African American studies and Native American studies who put this legitimate and peer reviewed and studied stuff out there on the internet to be learned, and it's not making into our you know, the educational canon. And there was a lot of that kid just saying, hey, like this stuff is out there and it's true. And why didn't you tell us about this? Like you underserved us. And you know, at the end of it, she gives the kid an F and tells him to come see her because, you know, he made waves in the wrong spot. That's like, I really appreciated that. I don't read a lot of back matter, but I really appreciated that. It just gives a whole nother layer of context to the work, I think, in the way that the lens that you view it through.
Yeah, and so I mean, going back to the content of the main book a little bit. Sorry to do that, but my brain is just going in different directions. So to put this in soprano terms, Sonny is Christopher if he gave a shit about the neighborhood instead of himself, right?
Right.
You know, because Christopher, all he cares about himself and getting made. Sonny actually cares about the neighborhood. He knows these people. You know, he's telling them, "Oh, go look out for, you know, go tell Mrs. Johnson to put her dogs up, and you know, check on so and so because he may have a heart attack if he sees this dragon." You know, so he actually cares about the neighborhood, which, you know, maybe why he's in that particular spot he's in with the mobsters, because he can actually look out for them. You know, there's one spot where he's going to pick up some money. The guy doesn't have it all, and he's like, well, that's okay, just give me the rest of it tomorrow. But, you know, don't bet on UCLA anymore because they suck. So, you know, he actually cares, which so many times, you know, they're not portrayed that way. They're portrayed more as the Christopher type.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that gangster with a heart of gold. kind
Yeah,
of
I
thing.
mean, how did the mobster part of it hit for you, Matt? Because you're kind of the mobster guru with the group.
I mean, what it said to me was, this is very much the tradition of the Italian mob, typically ingratiating themselves to the local residents, so that the local residents are on their side. They can go about doing all their violent crimes and thievery behind the scenes, but they're treating,
Yeah, they protect their
Mr.
neighborhood.
Yeah, they're making sure their neighborhood is safe. So the neighborhood is always going to support them. A great example of this is John Gotti. The neighborhood where John Gotti lived, people loved him, and came to his defense every time he was arrested. So when I read that, that was just textbook, mafia type strategy for within their own neighborhoods, and that's touched on in The Sopranos too. There's a lot of really funny moments in The Sopranos where there's one really funny moment they're getting onto a guy for hot rodding his Trans Am through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And Silvio gets onto it. Oh, I told you to quit driving your car so fast through the neighborhood. Love that stuff. Yeah. So that really hit home for me, just from all that I've seen and read throughout the years. Because
they loved Capone too, right?
Chicago, I mean,
the people of Chicago loved Capone. He provided them with something that they couldn't get anywhere else, and he kept the neighborhoods safe as long as you stayed out of what you should have stayed out of.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you go back and read, and I'm somewhat of a true crime buff, and I've read a lot of organized crime stuff, and what they'll tell you when you get into these kind of things is there's no safer neighborhood than a gang neighborhood back in the heyday of the Italian mob.
Right, because the last thing they wanted to do was to draw in the police. So
yeah,
I was just wondering how it hit with you, as far as since I know you are that true crime kind of guy. Did it feel real, I guess, was kind of the question.
It definitely felt real
until
world.
The dragon showed up anyways.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, there's not. Unfortunately, the dragon's not real world. I mean, I would really wish it were.
It would explain a lot of shit if the dragon was real.
Oh man, it would fix a lot of shit. That's why I see it.
Especially just dragons that are mad about violence in the world.
Of course, yeah.
That's what got me. Just the thing that set the dragon off was seeing somebody getting hurt, like seeing somebody getting taken to, like everybody in this town is scared shitless because this giant creature is capable of leveling everything, and then the dude just is chilling on a rock somewhere. And the thing that sets him off is seeing people do to each other what they're afraid the dragon is going to do to them. I thought that was a neat little touch on it.
Well, and so the dragon is there to get a specific person that's the descendant of the guy that betrayed him, the knight that betrayed him back in the olden times, medieval times. And he probably would have just came and got the guy and left had he been, not seen this, but it just really set him off with his super dragon vision, as they put it.
Just on the topic of The Sopranos, since it came up, the Hubs and I went and watched the Suicide Squad movie this past week, and
what?
Just follow me here. Okay. We're watching we're there at the theater to watch the Suicide movie, and they're playing the trailers like for up and coming features, and they play the trailer for the Sopranos prequel or precursor film. It looks so freaking good.
That's his son playing him, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
that's why he looks so much like him.
It does. It looks like a very young Tony.
Yeah.
They did great. Yeah, everything about that. It looks like it's going to be a mix of mafioso 70s awesomeness, but there's a little bit of blaxploitation kind of element thrown into there. Dude, I can't wait to see this. It's going to be killer.
I did not go to the theater to watch that movie. I watched it at home
Nice.
because I still have theater anxiety for some reason.
Because we live in a hellscape in the middle of a pandemic.
Mhm.
That is not a lie.
So what do you think, guys? We adding Campisi to the old pull list, or is it?
Yeah, like I said, I'm probably gonna wait and get it collected just because I think this is one I'd rather read in a collected edition.
Mhm.
But it's definitely worth the read in my opinion, especially if you like, mob stories that involve dragons. Because there's so many of those out there.
I feel like that's a very niche audience.
That is a
Oh my
very niche
gosh.
audience.
Where's Brubaker writing that story when you need it?
Oh,
Right?
oh my gosh.
What about you, Matt? So kind of a one and done.
I'm not sure. I'm undecided. I mean, I really like the main character in this book. The dialogue, the writing was a lot of fun. It's just this hang up I have about interjecting the fantasy world and the quote real world.
Yeah.
That's my only hang up. And I got no justification for that. It's just a personal flaw.
Well, I get it. I used to have a thing, and I still really kind of do, with people being sucked from our world into a fantasy world. That was a trope that I really kind of got sick of in fantasy writing.
Mhm.
So I understand, this is kind of the reverse of that, but I do get it.
Mine is video games. I hate it when they like the Ready Player One stuff, or this new thing, the new Ryan Reynolds flick that's coming out, which Roger wants to go see, and I'm just nah. Where like the characters, like they're living in a video game. I'm just like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna check out the second issue. I want to see if it holds through. And normally Aftershock books, they're 4 to 6 issues. I think most of the time they're 4. So it's not gonna to break the bank to read this all the way through. Like I said, I think the writing is hilarious. I have less of a hang up on the interjection of fantasy and what we would consider reality, if it's done right. And I feel like it's done right in this one. They've kind of explained everything to the extent they need to explain it. So I'm along for the ride. I'll see what's up. I care vastly more about the current story with the young mob enforcer than I do the backstory. So I hope they don't.
I don't
obviously
see him spending a lot of time there.
Yeah, obviously
we've got what we need from it. Yeah,
they're gonna have to do some to explain who the guy, like what's up with the the blood feud. But yeah, I hope they live in the real world, or in the modern world as presented in this book for a little bit, because I'll check it out, because the modern world is weird and fun sometimes, especially when stuff like this is given to us. Speaking of the modern world being weird and strange at times, going to kind of branch off something we don't do very often and talk about some news. This week, a lot of big name comic writers jump ship from. I say a few comic writers jump ship from their projects. Other ones were just able to transfer and are doing multiple things. But there's this new platform called Substack that I'd never heard of before this week, and all of a sudden it's on everybody's talk about list. And I mean, you have writers like James Tynion IV, who was writing Batman, not re-sign his contract with DC, and is going to go to Substack. His kind of teacher, Snyder, is doing the same thing. Scotty Young is heading over there to do stuff. Saladin Ahmed is doing stuff, and it's interesting and weird, because before now, Substack had not been a platform for comics. It was more of just a way to send out, I guess, newsletters is the kind of gist I get. It was almost like a blog.
Yeah, it's almost like a Patreon for columnists.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I guess that they're branching out um, into comics now. So my question is, are I don't see me jumping on even when you have a guy like Scotty Young who's going to be carrying over I Hate Fairyland, which I love Scotty's work and I Hate Fairyland is great. I just it seems like a weird move. Um, like Kickstarter seems to make things more available to a wider audience, which is what I think comics needs as an industry. Like you need to put comics, you need to make them available to more hands and more buyers. And I think a platform like Kickstarter does that. But on the flip side, like this feels like it narrows the audience.
It's
In a
weird
way.
because people like Tynan, I think that's how you say his name. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tiny Onion. He is saying that he is not removing his creator-owned stuff that he
Mhm.
currently has out. It's just going to be for new stuff going forward. But then you have people like Scotty Young that's going to take I Hate Fairyland there, which is unfortunate because I don't see me signing up for this. Now, I have heard that eventually the stuff is going to be released in collected or even floppy editions to the
Right.
comic book stores.
Well, that's a maybe. That's a
Yeah,
maybe.
that's a maybe at this point. We don't even know for sure. But I don't know that I'm going to jump onto another platform. I've got a few people I support on Patreon, and they're people that I know personally.
Mhm.
Um, and to me, this just feels like another Patreon type thing. Oh, you can have this comic, because they do that on Patreon, right? If you're a subscriber to some of their Patreon, you can get some of their content for free from there.
Right.
Well, do you guys know why this is so attractive to these creators right now?
Well, I know that some of them are getting large upfront bonuses. Like,
exactly.
It's like writing for a publisher of a novel, where you're getting an advance on future endeavors.
Yeah, it's the upfront money. It's they're getting upfront money and creative control. I mean, and that's been, that's always been talked about. That's the hardest thing about being an image creator is you have no upfront money. So you're taking a big risk in being an image creator for the first time specifically. And this is removing all that risk.
Yeah, and most of that falls on the writers, right? Because they have to pay the artist to do the work up front.
And what platform are you referring to?
Image or other things. They have to pay out of their pocket up front. So if they're getting an advance, they can go ahead and pay the artist up front for the work.
That's not the way I understand. I mean,
on Subset, if they get an advance, they can pay the writer, they can pay the artist, or Substack, they can pay the artist up front out of their pocket because they're getting an advance on the comic.
Well, yeah, but you just referenced that image writers pay artists up front.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way I've always heard it. So some of these guys, even when they share royalties, a lot of what the writers will do is, they'll just go ahead and give the artist a page rate and they'll sign the contracts, and they'll pay them up front, and then they get reimbursed on the back end with sales. There's a few people who have spoken about that.
I know our buddy Justin Jordan does it though.
Yeah, that's one of the things that he talks about, is having to have this, kind of a purse to get at least the first couple of issues done, so that they can start getting some money in to go past like a 6-issue arc.
Which seems like a huge financial burden on the writers. So
well, it's interesting to me that
the draw to getting an advance up front, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
One of the things that I it's just one of those things that, like, there's a lot of speculation and stuff going on about it, but it's interesting. And one of the things that has a lot of people talking is that the Substack is only going after art or going after writers right now. They're not they're not giving artists this kind of same and there's a few artists, people who are writer artists, but it's mainly just for the writing. They're not giving them the same deal, or they're not advertising to them. They're not going to them, which again, I know they're giving the writers full royalties for the contracts they sign and stuff they produce for there, but I wonder how much of that is going to, that makes it incumbent on the writer to share creative control and to share, royalty rights with the artist. And I wonder how much of that we're going to see.
Well, I think you will, just because it's going to be the same formula they use. Let's say Justin Jordan, just because we know his model, right? So let's say and I doubt he's going to do this, but let's say he went to this service, he gets an upfront fee, he pays his artist out of his pocket. They're not responsible for paying that second half of the creative team. He does it out of his advance. So I don't know why they wouldn't give them equal control, just like you would any other artist you hired.
Well, I mean, there's a few reasons. For one, if these things do blow up, then you're gonna get a bigger payday, and that you're gonna have artists.
The reason you wouldn't is because no self-respecting artist is gonna come work for no creative control.
They've done it for years.
Yeah, I was going to say they're still doing that at a lot of places, and especially with these new artists who are trying to make a name for yourself. So if you're and I'm not saying like James Tynan would do this. He by all accounts, James Tynan seems to be an up and up dude and on the level and very much into creator rights. But if you get a chance to draw a book right now for James Tynan, who is like, he won the Eisner for Best Writer of the Year this past year. He's got books that are blowing up. He is the hot shit, and you haven't had a book yet, or you're a relatively unknown, then yeah, you might sign that because you want the work, but B, you want to get your name out there. It's the same reason that they've gone to the big two and they continue to go to the big two forever.
On the big two stuff, yes, I understand, because it's not their intellectual property,
right? But that's also true of Valiant. That's true of a lot of things. One of the
stuff that's not your intellectual property, but if you're going and you're helping create the design and so forth of the characters, that becomes your intellectual property. Now, granted, there are times like Wells and Dalton, they hired people to just draw the art for the book, and they gave them a page rate, and that was it. Right. And I'm not saying that's not ever going to happen in these scenarios. Because it absolutely will, but I think that the bigger name artists generally draw bigger name writers generally draw bigger name artists to their work.
Well, they can certainly, but I mean, like
there's people that give opportunities to up and coming artists, but they also, well, and again, I'm speaking generically. I'm not in this business. I don't know.
Well, something that kind of comes to mind is the recent kind of kerfluffle, I guess is what you can call it, with La Rosa and Remender over the first issue of Scumbag. Because there was a tweet that went kind of viral, and everybody, it very much appeared that from the context, which context is what it is, and a lot of times there's not a lot there. It looked like maybe La Rosa wasn't being given what he was contracted for a hot minute. Turns out he was. By all accounts, what it looks like happened is La Rosa was originally supposed to draw all of Scumbag and had signed a contract for royalties and all of that fun stuff, because Remender is very good about sharing his creator-owned 50-50 down the line. But La Rosa got sick and couldn't, like, he was only going to be able to do the first issue, and so when he couldn't meet the contract, it looked, again, I'm not sitting at the table, but just kind of by the way the conversation between those two folks and the explanation was given mostly by La Rosa on his end, it looks like Remender came to him and said, hey, look, like you can't meet your contractual obligations, you're going to breach this, so your options are either you breach it and we're going to have issues here, because I don't want to wait however long it is before this comes out, like it needs to go now, or we sign a new contract. I just pay you a flat out page rate for all the pages you've done for this first issue, and you sign over all rights and royalties. And that's what La Rosa did, because the dude needed to go to the hospital. Like, he needed to go. He has really bad back problems apparently. And that's the contract. And what he was saying, part of that conversation was, look, this first issue went bananas and sold and made a shit ton of money. And I'm not going to see any of that. I don't get any royalties from any of that. I got paid a page rate, and that's what he contracted for. Now, the flip side of that, and this is where, I've had kind of a back and forth with folks that we know, is that, look, Rick Remender has been real vocal about what other people that he's worked for, like Marvel and stuff, should do, even though they're not contractually obligated. Like, they should be giving him money and paying him for some of his work that he's done before, even though it was Marvel and he signed the contracts. So it's a little, not a great look when he comes back and doesn't volunteer, doesn't do what he's saying other people should do. So you take that same circumstance, which is an Image book that's very much in the now, and yeah, that same thing could happen. And that's what makes, if Substack is giving all of their signing contracts with writers, just the writers, and they're giving all rights and royalties, what are we just going to see a continuance of like the page rate thing, and stuff like that, or are we going to see the writers take it upon themselves to do the shared IP stuff? I mean, Kirkman wrote a manifesto about, like, write your own stuff, own your own stuff, and then he went and started Skybound and just followed the Marvel model. So there's a lot of that going around. And so part of me wonders, just in general, when we talk about things like creator rights, how much of it is people actually advocating for creator rights, or how much of it is people just advocating for money that they think they're owed? I don't know. I'm not making a judgment call on that, but this very much raises these questions, right? Like,
I think it's going to be incumbent upon each artist to have to negotiate.
Yeah.
Whether they want to do it as a page rate, or if they want to do it as part of the creative right.
Yep.
And get a percentage of the sales. Now, granted, the way this works is they get this advance up front, and they keep their money until the advance is met. So, I don't know how that is going to work for the artist. So, I mean, they're going to have to negotiate on their own part, would be my, thoughts on that.
Yeah, they would have to. That's like, I said the same thing to our buddies Dalton and Wells when they were, and a lot of the young comic creators we talked to. It's like, dude, go get $200, pay a lawyer for 2 hours of his time, and have them tell you exactly what you're signing, and decide if you want to negotiate something on that. Because when we've had this conversation, the United States is one of the only countries in the world that doesn't recognize what's called moral rights, where in other countries they don't allow work for hire contracts. And so this kind of only happens here, but that's also why we've had this influx and explosion of IP in America, in the States, is for those exact reasons. But I don't know, it's interesting.
I don't think this is the what's it called? What is it again? Substack. Yeah, I don't think this is incumbent upon them to make sure that the artists get paid.
No, it's the artist.
It's upon the artist to negotiate that
with the writers, which they're going to do anyway. So, but I really do hope if that's going to be the new this kind of model that those folks are taken care of.
Now, for me personally, I don't know how much involvement I'll have with it. So
for sure.
That will remain to be seen, I guess, depending on what's being put out there. But it's some pretty big name writers going to this format.
Yeah, not gonna lie, Scotty Young's doing the I Hate Fairyland thing is enticing. Like, I might just jump in and check that out to see what it is. One of the things I also kind of wonder about this, though, Substack apparently made a epic shit ton of money like last year. They're a relatively new company and new platform. I wonder what happens if they come in, they make a lot of bank, they get really valuable to another larger company and get bought up. There's a lot of speculation that there's been some other companies who have done similar things in print media before, who come in, they make a big splash, and then they make themselves really appetizing to a larger company and then sell everything. So that's also a possibility. This is
Yeah, I mean,
very
their contracts that they sign still, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but their contracts should transfer with the purchase of ownership.
yeah, they will. They'll have to honor those contracts. So I'm just saying,
Right.
Substack comes in and makes a big splash and a big name, and then in 2 years, it's like it's been bought up and that money is gone. So it's where I go with that is there's this question of its longevity and
Yeah.
whether or not it's going to behoove middle tier.
Do you think that Hickman or Tynan or Scotty Young are going to have a hard time finding work if
No,
happens?
that's what I was going to say. You've got these big names. I just wonder if it's going to behoove like lower tier writers, and not in talent, obviously, but just in reputation and name recognition, if it behooves them to jump ship.
I think it may behoove anybody to do it for their creator-owned stuff.
Yeah.
I could see people doing that, but not putting all of their eggs in that basket, so to speak. I mean, currently you have these big names that are going to do that, but I could see the middle tier writers continuing to do work for the big two along with maybe jumping over to this.
Well, yeah, and even Tynan could do that. All he did was not re-sign his exclusivity contract. He can still go back and do work for hire. For DC or for Marvel or for whoever he wants to. I feel like Tynan follows Scott Snyder to a lot of places.
You should go read a lot of Chip Zdarsky's comments jokingly about Tynan leaving Batman.
You're talking about on Twitter?
Yeah,
I've seen a few of them. I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah.
There's also,
just if you want to see one writer poking fun at another.
Yeah, that's the light side of it. There's a little bit of a dark side of when it comes to the Substack stuff too. Apparently, they have a little bit of a history of allowing or turning a blind eye to, trollishness, a lot of homophobia, a lot of transphobia, racism, that kind of stuff. Like it's one of those things that you see these new, I don't even know what you call them, these new platforms, Telegram, Telegraph, all these other stuff pop up that people kind of flock to, that they start these blogs on. I know WordPress had a problem with it at one point and they shut that shit down.
Yeah, it's going to be hard because of free speech to, there is a, where does their culpability begin on it? You know, so that's a debate on any platform. You got Facebook and Twitter now having to fight the battle of misinformation on COVID, right?
Right.
So, this is, obviously we don't want to see hate speech anywhere, but this is a thing that every platform across the nation is going to have to or not just across the nation, but the world, I guess, is going to have to battle these kinds of.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they don't have to. That's
right.
No, they don't have to battle it.
They can ignore it, or they can choose to battle it, I guess, is the right.
Yeah, and that's going to be, that's going to be up to the, public opinion and public support on what they do.
That's right.
What I worry about more is something unfairly getting tethered to one of these like, somebody like Scotty Young. Scotty Young is is an ally to the LGBTQ community. He's somebody I have a lot of respect for. He's a friend. I've seen there's been a little bit of internet doing what the internet does again, which say how could you go to there and support this platform and bring attention to them when they've allowed transphobia? And I don't think that's fair, because again, those were, like, most people hadn't heard of this platform before last week, I would wager, and they certainly, my response is, well, you're also on Twitter, and Twitter is Twitter, and it's a platform that allows a lot of trollishness and a lot of hate speech and stuff to fester. You use YouTube, so why shouldn't they use this platform if it can work out to their monetary and capitalist advantage, if it makes them some money, if it gets their name out there, if it gives them a way to own their IP, just because some other, ne'er-do-well and crappy person started a blog and said some stupid shit. So I hope that doesn't happen, and I hope people, the general audience has enough common sense or enough understanding to not
I
transfer some of those opinions that aren't
I
theirs.
personally try to judge each person based on their content, not the content of the company they're necessarily publishing under.
I do and I don't, and I'll be a little
bit. It depends on, there's some very obvious, ones that would turn me away, but yeah.
I was gonna say I'll be a little bit of a hypocrite. Like if you have a Kickstarter, let's talk about it. If you tell me you're on Indiegogo, no, that's a big red flag. I'm gonna step back. And it may not be anything that you may not have anything to do with the CG bullshit.
Personally, I wouldn't do the Indiegogo just because there's you can get screwed out of your money with no recourse on that. Kickstarter, if it doesn't get funded, you get your money back. On Indiegogo, if it doesn't get funded, they keep your money anyway.
Well, and
have to supply anything.
That's why grifters love it. Like that's why it's part of that. But
so for that reason alone, let alone the people that are using it, that's enough reason to stay away from it.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Anyway, I was just curious about what your opinion was on the short stack, since it's been, it's
short stack.
Not short stack, Substack. Sorry.
Our short stack is pretty nice. I don't think we should go away from that.
They infringed on we should have trademarked it. They stole that from us. I was just curious to see if you guys were going to launch on. I haven't yet. I know some people who have. They tend to like it.
Matt, are you going to follow any of these creators over there?
No, I mean, it's digital and I'm just not, I don't buy digital. I don't care for it. So, if they decide to do some print publishing, then, my feelings may change. I mean, I don't have a moral stance against digital publishing. It's just not, I just don't prefer not to read that way.
Same. And that's why I'm buying, supporting Justin Jordan's American Monster on Kickstarter.
Yeah,
so that I can get the hardback of what he's been publishing on Webtoons.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
I actually read that. Like I've read most of that on Webtoons. That is a good book.
It looks wonderful. It's just like Matt. I don't read a lot of digital. The only time I read digital is when I didn't get the book for our roundtable. That's literally the only time. Well, that and manga that I, have my subscription for.
I have a decent laptop that folds over into like a, I don't know what to call it, into a pad of some sorts. And so I'll read Comixology stuff on there, even if it's not just for the show. I don't mind it. If
I would be more likely to read prose on digital than I would comics.
Well,
and I think it's just the following along.
Looping it back around to the Substack thing, there are some newsletters, like non-comic related stuff on there that has caught my attention now that I know what this is, because I'll read a newsletter. I think there's some really good like legal blogs that I follow that would be a good home for. So anyway,
no one follows legal blogs, Caleb.
Legal nerds do.
Really good legal blogs. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm around the wrong crowd, but I've got other people that would be just nodding their heads. So. But anyway, let's kind of circle this back around and talk about some comics that we can put in our hands. I'm glad we talked about that. There's a lot to unpack with that.
It's one of those things we could literally talk about for an entire episode.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Well, and it's so much of it is speculation because this is just starting to.
You're right there. We don't know where a lot of this is going in this industry.
Well, let me just give a shout out to some of our friends and fellow podcasters, and it hasn't dropped now, but Scotty Young was a guest on 11 O'Clock Comics, their podcast last night. It should be published today or tomorrow. And it was all about Substack and what he's doing on there and kind of what they do. So if you're curious, I mean, I'm going to listen to it, but for either of you two or the folks listening to this podcast, if you don't, and you're like, okay, what is this? Let me hear something straight from the horse's mouth, an actual creator who has experience with this and is very savvy when it comes to contracts and IP. Go listen to what Scotty has to say. I think it'd be worth your time. And it would maybe answer some questions, and it'll answer some questions that we have on here too. I mean,
I would rather read. No, I'm kidding. I was going to say I'd rather read what Scotty has to draw, but you should definitely listen to 11 o'clock comics.
They're good stuff. Well,
I didn't want to take away from you promoting them. That's why I stopped myself. But
Oh.
I was kind of joking about. I'd rather read what he had to say.
He's got a good voice. I don't know. He sounds nice.
No, I'm just saying. I was joking. But
Yeah, no.
Quote unquote, I'd rather read his comics.
No, I mean it's fine. I'll tell Jason Wood you hate him. That's fine.
Yeah, don't do that. Jason's gonna listen anyways. So no, I think you should totally listen to their interview.
It'll be fun stuff. I'm excited, but I'm more excited to hear what you read this week, Craig.
Okay, so I read a book called Suicide Squad Get Joker #1 from DC Black Label.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Azzarello wrote it. Alex Maleev did the art.
Nice.
Matt Hollingsworth on colors. Jared Fletcher on letters. This team of Azzarello and Maleev doing Batman Black Label stuff or doing Gotham Black Label stuff is pretty great. Did either of you read this by any chance?
I haven't.
No.
Okay, so this book it retells the origins of Jason Todd up to the point, he gets killed by the Joker and he doesn't know how he comes back to life, but he comes back to life and he does Jason Todd things. He becomes the Red Hood. He kills people. He doesn't have that compass that Batman has. It says, don't kill the bad guys. He's doing what Jason Todd does. He gets arrested. He gets put in prison. And he has to fight in prison to stay alive because he's put so many of these people in there. And the prisons get tired of it. So he eventually ends up under Amanda Waller's care. So Amanda Waller, of course, recruits him to join Suicide Squad. And their mission
She asked real nice.
No, she asked in Amanda Waller way. And she convinces him to join up because they are going to kill the Joker. So Harley's on the team, and honestly, the other people on the team are not people I'm familiar with. But they start this. They go to Gotham. They break in it's real political because it's set in today's time. Mm-hmm. One of the guys on the team actually is in prison because he was one of the insurrectionists that invaded the Capitol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's this kind of, there's a black guy on the team. So of course they're butting heads. Anyways, they get to Gotham and they find out that they've been set up, that the Joker's actually being financed by the Russians and his goon squad is not his typical goon squad. These are professional killers that are working for him. And so Jason calls Amanda and realizes she's actually in Gotham herself, overseeing this from Gotham. Well, the Joker breaks in, kills Amanda, and now has the explosion device to kill each of the Suicide Squad members.
This is going to end well. I can see it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was really good. That little twist at the end really sold it for me. But, Maleev's art's just fantastic anyways. Yeah. But yeah, this was really good. I was really, I don't want to say surprised because I expect it from this team. But, I haven't really been reading a lot of Suicide Squad lately. But the fact that it was in Black Label and this team drew me to it. And now the fact that the Joker can kill any one of them that he wants at any time.
And so, I mean, he's got Harley under his thumb again.
He does have Harley under his thumb now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The book ends with him killing one of the random dudes on the team.
Yeah.
So, it will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Okay. Did it show Jason Todd still in the hubcaps?
No, it showed Jason Todd beating the shit out of 1,000 different people, though.
Should have showed him stealing the hubcaps. How are you going to leave the hubcaps out?
Yeah, he talks about you know, how he was the Robin that no one really liked. So yeah, there's some funny moments in it. He gets moved. What is it? Belle Reve? Is that the name of the prison? I always forget. He gets moved to Belle Reve because there's no more guards to fight at the prisons, because every time he gets jumped, the guards jump in and help beat him up. So yeah,
just gets no respect.
He gets no respect because he's Jason Todd. And when she walks in, he goes, "Oh, I'm glad you came to see me." And he thinks it's Batman. Of course it's not, because, you know, Batman doesn't do that for him.
No.
So
I'm gonna check this out. I hadn't heard about this. I didn't even know this came out.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story, right? To have the Suicide Squad with Harley on the team and Jason Todd, two people that have vendettas against the Joker, going after the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I figure Batman's going to step in at some point, because you don't come into his neighborhood and kill his villains, right?
Yeah, you
especially Jason Todd. Yeah.
But so it's again speculation. Part of me makes kind of would say that maybe I could see Batman having, like, keeping a watchful eye somewhere from the shadows, and if he needed to swoop in, he would. I could almost see them, you know, especially with Azzarello being Azzarello, like showing Batman at the last panel, just knowing, like, letting them know he was there the whole time, but didn't lift a finger.
Yeah,
he can be a dick sometimes.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I can see Batman's got to have a role at some point in this, whether it's allowing it to happen from a distance or stopping it. But it was really good. As you expect, like I said, from this creative team, you expect nothing but solid work. So,
is this standard sized, or was this over?
No, it's the magazine size.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Well, Matt, my brother, did you read something this week, buddy?
I did. So I read a OGN from Albatross Funny Books. This is by Harold Schechter and Eric Powell. And that's Albatross Funny Books is actually the actual name of the publisher, by the way.
Right.
Did you hear what Eddie Gein done is the name of this book? Lot to unpack here. This is a true crime story. Art obviously done by Eric Powell. Harold Schechter is a true crime writer. I've read quite a few of his stories, whether they be books or not, throughout the years. He wrote the most in-depth and detailed book about Eddie Gein that was published back in the late 80s. And he's revisiting that story in this work they're basically hitting all the major points in the story of Ed Gein. Ed Gein, for those of you who may not know, is a small Wisconsin farmer who was arrested back in the 50s for murder. And what was discovered in his home was it was a house of horrors. And to summarize it, this is the inspiration for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, for Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill.
Right.
This is the inspiration for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Leatherface character. This is the inspiration for all of those things. This man that was arrested back in the 50s, and the story that came out about him. It's a story that has always been just utmost fascination to me, because for so many reasons, again, a lot of things to unpack. Like I said, this happened back in the 50s, back in the quote golden era, back in the quote good old days, back before, and this really shines a light on when people say those things, like, boy, things have really changed. They haven't. Things haven't changed. Information delivery has
That's right.
changed.
Right.
That's right.
And if you read a lot of, I think Harold Schechter, I think he likes pointing that out in his writing, because he writes a lot of true crime that took place centuries ago. And you read some of these and they sound like the crimes the shocking crimes you hear about in today's world, but yet they happened back in the 1800s, or they happened back in the early 1900s. For those of you that subscribe to Amazon Prime, you can download for free some short true crime stories that Harold Schechter has written.
Oh, okay.
And they are short stories. They're very brief, and they're all true crime stories that, and every one of them that I've read, I mean, it seems like he really likes pointing that out. Things haven't gotten worse as far as human nature. It's just we're just much more exposed to it now. That kind of thing is talked about a lot of times. If you ever watch documentaries on, like, say, the history of the belief in werewolves, a lot of times what comes up in those documentaries is, a lot of what they think propagated the belief in werewolves was finding murder victims that had been slaughtered, like, say, the victims of Jack the Ripper.
Mm.
And, if this was happening back in the 1700s, that, these kinds of murderers weren't known about. So let's say you were making discoveries of victims like that. You keep finding these mutilated human bodies, that propagated the belief in werewolves. Oh, this must be a wild animal, something, yada, yada, yada. So, how this story, it's just been a lifelong fascination for me, mostly for that basis. And also how this one man that everybody in this small farming community of about 300 people never would have suspected of him doing these horrific crimes, even if some of the things he didn't do weren't crimes necessarily, but these horrific actions, the macabre way that he decorated his house. It's just, and that changed American literature, and it changed American cinema.
Yeah.
Whenever Alfred Hitchcock made the movie Psycho, based off the novel, of which was obviously based off this story, all the scary movies up till then were about mythical monsters. Mm-hmm. So when Psycho came out, that changed everything.
That's right.
For American horror movies. And so those kind of, the real life inspirations for things like that in any way, shape, or form are typically really interesting to me. And this one just being such an extreme example of that in so many ways, and that's what's always been a fascination with true crime to me, is I literally believe the saying that truth is stranger than fiction. And, reading these things that actually happened, you literally can't make them up.
Right.
Things that really happen, you literally can't make up.
Right.
They have to happen first, and then the fiction follows. So this is and Harold Schechter's a great writer. It's not a lot of times if you get in some true crime, not all, obviously, some true crime writers write almost like a textbook style.
Yeah, forensically, right?
Yeah. And Harold Schechter does not do that. He's a very easy writer to follow. And he's not sensational in his writing. He's very matter of fact, to the point. You certainly don't get the feeling like he's trying to glorify or embellish. So this I recommend, of course, and Eric Powell has a lot of fans, rightfully so. And with the subject matter that he likes to illustrate, that he likes to cartoon, this falls right in line with his, right in his wheelhouse. So he did a great job here. It is all in, dual tone, black,
Mhm.
white, grays, dual tone.
Yeah, it's a
So
typical
there's-
Eric Powell art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really does a great job of hitting all the major points in this story. Spends a lot more time than I assumed they would on, I guess you would say, the early points in Ed Gein's life. Him growing up, and they do make some assumptions in here.
Yeah, they kind of have to though, right?
Well, and if you read the back matter, they make a point stating that out. Like,
Right.
these are some things that were said. There were some things, and there's a lot. This is a narrative of true crime.
Right.
So there's a little bit of artistic license that has to be taken.
Right.
Now, when you're reading it, I got the feeling specifically, on the things that they took some artistic license with. It really felt like they were. Like, I didn't have to guess which moments
Right.
were.
Yeah,
But that may be because I'm so familiar with the material as well.
I would
so I'm
say,
not.
yeah, because I read this also. I would say it's everything that happens up until the kind of the sheriffs find out what's going on at his house, right?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff
All of his
before-
childhood and stuff. It's supposition based on interviews and things he may or may not have been telling the truth about.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing, is the more you get to learn about this story, the more uncertain everything is because there's a lot of debate. Was he truly mentally ill, or was he just basically, he had a documented low average IQ. Was he just a naive, sheltered people pleaser? I mean, it's really hard to tell because you can't. Any psychologist will tell you can't tell if somebody's mentally ill just by their extreme behavior.
Right.
That's not how mental illness works. So
Right.
his actions make you want to say, "Oh, this dude was definitely mentally ill because of all these things that he did." Well, that's not how mental illness works.
Right.
So it's really hard to tell. I mean, and there's books been written, and I read a book about one of the judges that oversaw a trial for Ed Gein, and he was convinced that Ed Gein was totally sane.
Right.
And so I read his book, and essentially what you have to do at the end of the day is leave it up to the professionals.
Yeah.
As a lay person, you can make all the insights you want, but you're a lay person making those insights from the outside. And, there were teams of professionals that spent lots of time with him and deemed him mentally ill, criminally insane is the word they used at the time.
Yeah, the first trial, the psychologists that they had, or psychiatrists that they had, that spoke kind of in his favor, diagnosed him with Oedipus complex, that it was in that kind of set the tone for the narrative from there on, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the schizophrenia was the big one.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia was the big diagnosis.
Right.
But it's really, it's again, the more you read about this, the more there is to digest and the more questions that you have. That's what makes this case so fascinating. I was really glad that they mentioned it. Did you finish this, Craig?
I did. I finished reading it today because I knew you were going to be talking about it. And honestly, it was probably going to be my book of the week if you didn't talk about it. So I was glad that you said so.
One of the things that's just fascinating to me, and surely that I was glad they mentioned it in this book, is at the end they made a point to mention that Errol Morris spent a lot of time in the psychiatric hospital interviewing Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Years and years ago. And he's got all this footage of him talking to Ed Gein, and it's just sitting on a shelf.
Never been released.
And that's maddening to me.
Well, him and Werner Herzog, Werner Herzog, we're going to make a documentary.
Yeah.
Which, please, at some point, somebody give us that damn documentary.
Because I listened to an interview of Errol Morris, and he spoke about this. And he's like, most of the time I talked to him, we didn't talk about his crimes. He was embarrassed to talk about his crimes. But he did spend a lot of time with him, and it just would be very, very interesting to hear those tapes, to see that footage.
Caleb, I think you would really enjoy this book if you read it.
I might. I struggle with this stuff for the exact reason that Matt said. Reality is stranger than fiction. I think that real life is ultimately way more terrifying than fiction. So I have a hard time getting into this stuff because it like something like this bothers me. Infinitesimally.
From the legal aspect, though, I think you would be interested in.
No, for sure. Yeah. I like serial killers and stuff like that. And this is why I don't watch true crime stuff. It bothers me to know because it's more horrific than actual horror is. You can't make this kind of sadism up and stuff. And that's one of the things you were talking about was the disagreement on whether he had, he was sane or whether he had mental illness. I think,
or even how many people he killed.
You're exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of people, they immediately want to look at folks, the extremes like Ed Gein, but even just, single murder killers or things like that. And they want to instantly attribute mental illness to them because it is terrifying to think that an everyday, somebody whose brain is functional in the same capacity as our own could commit these atrocities. Like that is so there must be something broken with these people, which in itself creates an entire stigma with mental illness.
That's why, yeah. And in this book, and that point you just made, and the point I was making earlier, in that, that is why I always make the point: the Joker is not insane,
right?
Yeah. And that is why he is so. That is why the Joker is truly scary, because he's not insane,
right? Yeah, and so that's why, part of me wants to read this book because, like you said, there are legal aspects, and really anytime you get into stuff about civil commitment, that is an area of the law that my interest is piqued, because it's civil commitment. You can have a doctor put somebody in a psychiatric ward for an unlimited amount of time based on that doctor's opinion, versus anything else you have to have them convicted, and there's a limit to the prison sentence and all that fun stuff. But stuff like that I am curious about, but it's weird for me, and especially so going into the law and to the aspects of the training in the law. Like I've had to see some videos of interrogations and things that happen in courtrooms and stuff that doesn't get shown, stuff that is considered privileged information, that it's hard to watch. And these things are real, and you see that reality and the impact that it has. So I would almost rather just read the most horrific sci-fi, blood spurting, brutal serial crime drama fiction.
But it all comes from this character.
No, and I know, and that's what gives it that's what I just I'm even.
So one of the things that happens in Matt, you can tell if this is true or not, because you certainly have more of a base in the knowledge of this story than I do. But one of the things that happens is at some point he wants out of the mental hospital. He says, I've been healed. And they said, okay. So they put him before a review board, and they ask him some modern proverbs. And the last one they ask him is, what's, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush mean? He goes, well, it means that somebody strangled and killed that bird. So was he did he fake his intelligence to make it look like he was insane, or was he really insane, like Matt said?
Yeah. And there was, again, that point right there. And that's true. Yeah, he did at one point. This was in the, because there's footage of that. You can actually see the footage of that where he makes his trip to the courthouse to petition for his release. Yeah. And the judge that oversaw that basically just told him, just come right out and said, you don't understand what the world is like, and releasing you to the world would be against your your best interest
Yeah.
in your health. I mean, he had been, because I believe it was the late 70s, and he had been locked away since the 50s.
Yeah.
And it was blatantly obvious that he couldn't have interacted with the outside world.
One thing that was really cool that the book pointed out, Matt, you touched on this a bit, but that was the fact that this brought horror home. In America, it was always some distance horror that came to America. It was supernatural. It was somebody.
Well, it humanized it. I mean, all of a sudden, the boogeyman was the boogeyman in U.S. cinema. All of a sudden, that was a human being. It wasn't Dracula. It wasn't the Wolfman. It was,
every slasher after Psycho.
Yeah. All the slasher
movies to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It all sprang from this one story.
I mean, and they don't even know how many people he actually killed.
No,
because he never gives them a straight answer.
Yeah.
He pretends he can't remember it, or he really couldn't remember it because he was schizophrenic. We don't know, but they have no idea how many people he actually killed. They just know what they found in this house of horrors, basically.
I read a few years ago. I read the transcripts of his interview when he was first arrested. And it's fascinating. I mean, he doesn't even answer questions the way a normal person would.
Right.
It was like, it took an extreme amount of patience to interview him because he doesn't talk like a normal person. He doesn't respond to questions like a normal person. There's definitely something going on with him, but exactly what it was, again, it's really hard to tell. You have to just leave it to the experts. And
Caleb, like you said, the from the legal aspect of this, one of the things that they talk about is one of the lawyers said you had to be real careful because you could end up unintentionally leading him.
Yeah.
Because of the way he responded to things. He would just answer with one or two words, so they would have to ask him questions that would be considered leading the witness.
Well, and especially if you've got somebody like that who is, I think Matt mentioned earlier, and again, I'm not an expert on Ed Gein or anything, but if you've got somebody who is psychologically driven to be a people pleaser on some point, they pick up social cues that you don't even know you're giving, like literally a smirk, a nod, the way you shift your head, the way you shift your eyes. They can pick up on these little subtle things and interpret them in a way that they know what you want them to say, or can at least guesstimate to what answer that they're looking for. That's it. And it's, if you're ever on the other side of that, it is unsettling.
I think the law part of you should read this book, Caleb.
I probably will, because it's Eric Powell. So
I know that there's horrific parts of this book, and you can't deny that. There's horrific parts of the story that you can't deny.
Yeah.
But
well, on that note,
absolutely intriguing.
Well, and on that note, something that really surprised me, as gory and horrific as this story is, that stuff is not illustrated much at all in this story.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that Eric Powell chose not to cartoon in this that I, going in, would assume that we couldn't have waited to do.
Yeah.
So it was the gore was definitely toned down for this story, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So one more question on this, Matt, that I've been dying to ask you the whole time is, have you watched all of the Psycho movies? I assume you've seen the first one.
Yeah, I watched the first one. Yeah.
Okay, so there is one that was done, and I think it's part 4, that was done as a Showtime, made for Showtime movie. That is his. I know it's ridiculous. No, but listen, this thing is his. It's his backstory, and it's the best Psycho other than the first one. It's the only other one I would recommend to anybody, because it gives his backstory, which very much follows this book. If you ever get a chance to check it out, you should. The kid that played Elliot in E.T. plays a young Norman Bates. Well, the whole premise of the movie is that he has been released from the mental hospital, and his girlfriend is pregnant, but he doesn't want this psychosis to go on to be reborn in a new generation of Bates. So he calls a radio talk show and is telling them his entire story. In telling them he's going to have to kill his girlfriend because she's pregnant with his child. So you get his entire backstory, which tells you at the end of the movie, the Psycho, the original movie, it talks about how they found other bodies in the lake and so forth. It gives you all of that, and it gives his mom manipulating. It's very much like the first half of this book. Now it's been years since I've seen it. I don't know how the acting holds up, but I remember really, really enjoying this movie when it came out. So, and could you imagine if Hitchcock had made Psycho 15 years later, what we would have got?
What do you mean?
Just the story that he would have been able to tell in cinema 15 years later with the changes in the rating systems. Because when he made Psycho, there was no rating systems. You just had to follow their rules. And one of the things that happened was when he made Psycho, the shower scene, that scene got denied 5 times by the board that reviewed the movies. And they kept telling him to change it. And he would just send it in again without any changes. And finally they just accepted it. But yeah, he refused to change it. He just kept turning it in until they finally just were like, okay, that's good enough. But if he could have made it and shown some of that other stuff that was in the house, when you got to see Norman Bates's house as opposed to just the hotel, what you might have seen had he been able to make that 10, 15 years later when the motion picture industry had changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on the topic, so do the two of you have a favorite Hitchcock film?
Psycho.
Yeah.
Mine's The Birds. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched The Birds. I'll just sit down and watch it.
It's cinematography because what it did for the motion picture industry and what it did for horror films, and I think as Matt's about to say, just the way it was filmed.
Yeah,
the cinematography was way ahead of its time.
Yeah. Angles, camera angles, things of that nature. Hitchcock was way ahead of anybody else at the time.
That movie does more for suspense than I think even many modern creators know how to work it. So
I mean, he had to, because you couldn't show all the other stuff. He had to bury it all in suspense.
Yeah, I love The Birds. I think it's a gem. So
it is. Yeah.
Wait, do what?
I said no, it is. Yeah, The Birds it is, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I love Psycho too. I don't think that you can collectively say, I won't collectively say one is like quote unquote better than the other, but like The Birds is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Also one of the most disturbing films that I've ever seen. So, well, I'm going to talk about a book real quick, and I do mean real quick because there's not a ton to it. It's a fairly straightforward story, but it's from our buddies over at Dark Horse Comics. And it comes out of the brain of Jeff Lemire, and it is painted by Mr. Tyler Crook, who I think is one of the best at what he does. I talk about the man a lot because I am a huge fan. I love what Tyler Crook does. And this is called The Unbelievable Unteens. This is the first. It comes from the world of Black Hammer, like a lot of stuff that Jeff Lemire is working on today. And John McCrae does a variant cover, which is actually the one that I have, and it's just a really, really cool variant cover. Lots of neon. John McCrae just wins. But so the story it focuses on this character named Jane Ito, and Jane is a comic book writer, artist, illustrator. And she's doing the convention circuit there in Spiral City, and it's very much like like you would imagine a real life con would be. People come up, they ask for her autograph, they love her work, they're asking her, do you have an end in mind? Like what's going on? And her comic book is called The Unbelievable Unteens. And it's a fan favorite, very, very much in the vein of I don't know, the Teen Titans, per se. And so they're doing the pictures and all that stuff. But Jane's a busy artist. She's on the struggle bus trying to make sure she meets her deadlines. So after the con, she foregoes going to BarCon and she goes home to go to work. She's got deadlines. She's got to do pages, and she's at her apartment. It's dark. She lives by herself. She's at her drawing table and she starts to hear something, and she doesn't know what it is. And she kind of looks around, and all of a sudden she sees this apparition pop up right before her eyes, and it's this dude in a green outfit with a jack-o'-lantern on his shirt, and she's freaked the fuck out because it looks like the kind of costume of one of her characters in her book, and she's just like, whoa, this is crazy, and you're probably gonna Ed Gein me, like, why are you in my apartment? And she grabs one of her nibs, I guess to stab the dude in the eye if she needs to, and he's just like, hey, hold up, like, I'm your friend, like, your name is Strobe, and like, well, don't hurt me, I'm here to help you, we've got work to do. And she's just like, dude, look, I get it, you're a fan, but you're crossing a line, you've come into my personal space, I don't know what Strobe means, but you're like, you need to get out. By the way, great costume, cool cosplay, but still, like, get out. And he's just like, no, this is me, this is really happening, you're not crazy. And he starts to float, and he's like, look, my name is Jack Sabbath, and I'm here to make you remember what we've lost. Your name is Strobe. You're not just drawing a comic book, you're drawing your memories. We live this. We were actually on the the unbelievable Unteens. And something terrible happened. We went up against a villain and a bad guy, and our team got, they got lost. There was, Jack Sabbath, I was a kid occultist. You were the living lightning. You were Strobe. There was our friend Straka, who was this big half, diamond, half concrete guy, Kid Boom, and then this other member of the team whose name was Snapdragon. And Snapdragon was kind of the focal point of the team. She had powers. She was the most charismatic. She was their leader. And she's actually the one who got all of us together. And it goes through and tells a story about how her dad, who's, his name was Mr. Moniker, searched the world to find people who were powered like his daughter and brought them together to be this amazing superhero team to save the world. But something happened. They went up against a villain that they weren't ready to go up against. And specifically, Jack Sabbath made a wrong move. And it cost them their lives, so to speak. And he thinks that that some of the team might still be alive in the nether realms, in the world, specifically, Snapdragon, who he was just head over heels in love with. He thinks they're stuck in hell with this apparition, this demon that they went up against, and so he is recruiting her to come back and help find the rest of the team, and uncovering this whole world that she had been taken out of and taken apart from. And she, at the end of it, she's accepted that she's got powers, because her powers kind of manifest in a really cool way. Look, I don't have to tell you about the world of Black Hammer and how much I love this thing. I talk about it a lot. There has not been a single bad story come out of this universe. I adore what Jeff Lemire is doing in the Black Hammer universe. This is the most expansive, involved, in-depth love letter to the medium of superhero comics that I think exists. He has managed to write love letters to the Golden Age, to the Silver Age, to the Bronze Age. He's written love letters to underground comics, love letters to the original impetus of superheroes, to the horror genre, to everything else. And he finds a way to take these tropes that we all are used to in our comics, that we all know that are beloved to us all, and he finds a way to give them to you in the exact manner of how they are, but make them fresh, make them strong, make them work for a new audience. And he has teamed up with some of the best artists in the game to do it. And like I said, there are very few watercolorists who can stand on the level of Tyler Crook. the dude can do things with that fluidic blessing. Because that's one of my favorite mediums, and he can do things with it that very few other people can do. But he also
Fluidic blessings.
Yeah,
Fluidic blessings.
liquidic blessings. That's what watercolor is. But one of the other cool things in this book, in some of the flashback scenes, he's not using watercolor, or at least I don't think he's using watercolor. He colors in a different way. You don't see, he's not blending. It's more like classic comic book coloring. I think he's picking up markers, which I haven't seen Tyler Crook use marker in a very, very, very long time. Like pre-Hero County. I just he may have, and I missed it, but you are seeing him play with a format that he what he's showing you is like, hey, don't forget I can do this too. And it's just astounding. You fall in love with page after page. His, like, there's a little bit of, in these pages, in these flashback scenes where he's showing you the thing, there's a little bit of like Madman in there. There's some old school, it looks like stuff that might have came out of the Claremontian era of X-Men. So
Claremontian.
Hey, that's not mine. I can't claim that one. If you listen to Jay and Miles explain the X-Men, they do the voice of the angry Claremontian narrator. So so that I can't claim the fame. But liquidic blessings is totally mine. TM.
Liquidic blessings.
But no, and especially with some of these pages that are eerie, creepy, meant to look like they're a haunted space. It's some of that same energy that Tyler Crook brought in Harrow County. The man's just a master. I can't get enough of his work. So this is just yet again another chapter in what is, I can't imagine how they're going to actually collect the entire Black Hammer universe at some time, but they're gonna. I know it. I feel it in my heart, and it is one of the most fun, just beloved and beloving, like extending just light, the spotlight down on this medium and this genre of superhero comics that entices us as we were kids, and it, my nieces who are 13, it plays to their strengths, and it plays to the stuff that they love about comics. And me as a 30-year-old dude, it plays to the stuff that I fell in love with about comics in the 90s. And folks that are in their 50s and 60s can see the stuff that made them fall in love with comics in their youth. It is a series and a construction that it spans generations, and you don't see that a lot in comics these days. And that's why Lemire is a master, and that's why he gets Mastercraft artists to work with him. So go pick this up if you haven't yet, and pick up the other Black Hammer stuff, because there's not a bad book in the bunch. I've never seen anything like this.
I fell off of the Black Hammer stuff just because there was so much of it.
There is.
It gets
really
overwhelming. But if they ever collect it in omnibus form, I will definitely be picking it up and reading it that way.
You should. Like, to me, I'm prone to hyperbole, but I think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us are, like, we're always looking for that thing that's going to be, the thing that's going to be the next generation's Sandman, like they're going to look back on, or Alan Moore Swamp Thing, or
don't you go there?
Yeah,
don't you go there.
No, I'm not saying
Okay.
that. I'm not saying that this is that. I'm saying that this feels special, though.
It is special.
This feels
but
like
I don't know
something
that.
that.
Yeah.
This feels
I
like
was going to
something
say,
that is
you
going
remind me of
to-
the kids saying that New Kids on the Block were going to be the next Beatles when they came out.
No, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna say that, but I think Jeff Lemire is a high watermark in sequential storytelling.
I believe that.
I think Jeff Lemire, for what he's done, is Jeff Lemire is a household name, both in comics and outside of comics.
Yeah, because
I
people
think
watch that show with the kid with the antlers.
Well, there's that, but I think even before that, I think he's done things that like people that don't read comics know what Underwater Welder is. Maybe not to the extent that they would because of something like Sweet Tooth, but I don't know, man. I think there's something special, not only about Jeff Lemire as a writer, but I think this, like the Black Hammer universe, is one of his greatest creations. And it might just be because I
don't disagree. It just got overwhelming with the amount of content.
Oh no, for sure, for sure. But that expansiveness to me is what makes it special.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong at all.
Yeah. Well, no, and I didn't take it that way. But something like just kind of in that same vein, it's like the X-Men universe that it stands right now. Like this is the brainchild in a lot of ways of what Hickman did, but there's just so much of it so fast that I don't think any of us are reading all the X books.
No, and it just gets to be so much that you have to limit what you're capable of consuming.
Yeah, time and economy. But no, I know. I think this is the world at large, the Black Hammer universe and how he's expanded it. I think it's something that's going to be studied, like as far as the craft aspects of how he's done it and what he's done and what he's doing in terms of utilizing nostalgia as a storytelling tool, but in terms of also taking that thing that is nostalgia and reworking it and ingraining it for something that is multi-generational. Like that to me is fascinating. So go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And God, man, if they give me that omnibus, I needs it and I wants it in my life. So
even if it's omniboo,
Matt loves that.
Yeah, it's because it's not a fucking word.
Neither is omnibuses, because the term omnibus, the word assumes all or means all consuming the entire collection.
The fact that you have a multi-volume omnibus is oxymoronic, but
yeah.
Anyway, you know what is words? Like real words?
What?
Liquidic blessings.
Liquidic blessings.
Liquidic blessings.
All right.
This is guys, how you know he's been in law school too long.
Liquidic.
I don't know that that's a legal term of art. Well, guys, have we shot our bolt? Are we ready to take this thing home?
We have.
I think so.
All right. Well, let's end this the way we always do. What do you think? Let's tell the folks what they should be grabbing this next week off the shelves.
All right, I'll go first. You should get God of Tremors. It's a one shot by Aftershock Comics, Peter Milligan and Piotr. I don't know how you say it. Piotr. How do you say that?
Not the way you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's Peter. I think it's Peter. Yeah.
Kowalski. A 19th century Gothic horror of exorcism, demonic worship, and epilepsy. Do I even need to read the rest to you guys, or did I sell you already?
I mean, kind of, but go ahead.
When Aubrey has his first seizure, he's pulled out of school and hidden away in the remote, in his family's remote country estate. His father, a high-ranking English priest, tries to chase the devil out of Aubrey. So that's why you should pick that up.
My dad tried that one time. Didn't work.
Yeah. Did he try to? Yeah.
All right, Matt, what do you grab?
That's not a thing.
Matt, what do you grabbing this next week?
So I'm
sorry, I
definitely
maybe had one
up,
too many shots.
And I think everybody else should too, from Image Comics. This is Ascender. This is number 18. This is, of course, by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This is the final issue in this story.
Yeah.
And how this is all going to be wrapped up, I'm very interested in. The end of of issue number 17 was incredible.
Yeah, Lemire just kills it on the series.
Or that watercolor good.
Yeah. Yep. With what did you call it?
Liquidic blessings.
I
mean, dude, Jeff Lemire just raining down liquidic blessings on all of us in the comic.
Except it was Dustin Nguyen.
Yeah, Dustin Nguyen.
True, but I mean, he's bringing all these cool watercolors to the forefront. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Come on, and they are raining down the liquidic blessings.
Matt, does it feel like to you that this is actually going to be an end, or are we going to have another series after this? You think?
Man, that's hard to say. I mean, it feels like this is the end of the story, frankly. I mean, it feels like this is the end of the story, but
honestly, so did Descenders ending.
I was going to say, I remember y'all saying that.
Well, so where I was going to go with that is Lemire finds ways to extend stories over and over again. So I mean, who's to guess?
Yeah, and I'm like 2 issues behind on that, so that's why I was asking what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I want y'all to go out this next week and pick up some gay shit off the shelf. Big facts. There is a book coming out from our buddies.
Weird. First time ever.
Yeah.
Kevin's recommending a gay book.
Yeah.
It's good for you. Just consume it. No, again, I'm like, I'm apparently loving the Dark Horse right now. There is a book from our friends at Dark Horse called Killer Queens #1 coming out. It puts the sass in assassin. This book is crafted and put together lovingly by David M. Boer, Claudia Balboni, and Harry Saxton. It's going to be fun. Like I said, they put the sass in assassin. Meet Max and Alex. These guys are reformed intergalactic assassins for hire. They're on the run, and they're also super gay. Their former boss, a fluffy monkey with a jetpack, is hot on their tail to take back his stolen ship. They got to eat, so they take a mission from Alex's old flame. Your standard no-kill, casualty-free kidnapping recovery from a nearby moon. The only complication: half the moon is ruled by a fascist dictator who's hostile to foreigners. They're the killer queens. So what could possibly go wrong? If you look at the cover of this book, it's great. It's got a very pulp feel to it. And so you look at this old style pulp art with these ray guns and lasers, and then you see the title says "Put the sass in assassin." I mean, I'm not going to not buy this, right? Like, you got to get it. So
yeah, it is definitely marketed to you.
Yeah, this is a book that, I mean, there's an evil fluffy monkey for a villain. So I want it. So go check out that. And you know what? Grab a few more books off the shelf. Why not? Take home a bunch of stuff and enjoy reading it. And then come to all those places I told you about earlier and tell us all about them. Talk to us about what you're enjoying, what you're reading. We'd love to connect with you. That's the beauty of our little nerd culture of a podcast and of a group of people who come together to listen to podcasts. It's fun. So support your local comic shops. Also, we're recording this on Friday, but as you're listening to this, I hope that you made it out to a local comic shop and supported them for what is going to be free comic book day, since it got postponed and chopped up and divvied across the calendar because
Just
of COVID.
be safe and don't go to any super spreader events.
Yeah, don't do that. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and go forth and love comics.
And enjoy your liquidic blessings.
Blessings upon you.
Blessings upon you. That's the way we should end every show.
We
Blessings
should.
upon you.
I'm going to
Blessings upon you.
rain down some liquidic blessings later.